Hey everyone, how's it going? My last video, I played a mod of Pokemon Yellow called Yellow Legacy, and one of the top comments said this: "It's now realistic for the rival to have 40 types of Pokemon on the SS Anne." This is referring to a line of dialogue Rival 3 says before you get the Cut HM that he has already caught 40 Pokemon. I often hear, somewhat erroneously, that Rival 3 is a liar, that he couldn't have 40 Pokemon. YouTuber Droomish made a video that has almost 1 million views that says that he's a fraud. And yet, they're all wrong. Rival 3 100% can have 40 Pokemon, and you don't have to take my word for it. In this video, I will prove no matter which version of Pokemon you are playing, you can easily, well, maybe not easily, but you can get 40 Pokemon prior to battling Rival 3. Now, of course, you might say, well, Jaros, you can just trade Pokemon from other games and have 150. We're not going to do that. We're going to stick to one save file in one cartridge. Can we get 40 Pokemon? We're also not going to be using any sort of glitches or cheating. Again, you can catch every Pokemon without leaving your house. We're going to be playing the game the way Game Freak intended us to play. For the most part, it's red and blue. We're gonna try our best. I'm sure there's some of you doubting Debbies out there, still thinking that I'm making this up. It's clickbait. There's no way he's gonna cheat somehow. No. We're gonna get more than 40 Pokemon, and I got the video footage to prove it. So let's start from the beginning. We're gonna take a starter Pokemon. It doesn't matter which starter. We're gonna take Bulbasaur. Next, we get to Route 1. On Route 1, there are 2 Pokemon available, Pidgey and Rattata. Realistically, you can catch these Pokemon later and you won't have to level them up as much. We're going to catch them here. That's 3 Pokemon. And you'll notice, to make things even easier so we don't lose count, I am nicknaming my Pokemon. Unfortunately, I will not be able to re-nickname them if they evolve, but it still should help illustrate my point here. Alright, so we have 3 Pokemon right now. I then go left of Viridian, Route 22. We can catch 3 more Pokemon. Nidoran female, then I caught a Nidoran male, and finally a Spearow. Note that using red or blue version, it will matter which Pokemon you can catch, but not the number. It's the same in either version. Next, I proceed to Viridian Forest, and I caught a Metapod, 7. I caught the pre-evolved Caterpie, which I called 8. Weedle, which is 9. Kakuna, that's number 10. We're in double digits now. And although it's a little annoying to find, we did get a Pikachu. That's number 11. Part of the reason I wanted Bulbasaur is that it's relatively easy to defeat Brock. I didn't have Vine Whip yet, but Leech Seed and Growl do a good enough job, and I could gain experience points across my Pokemon who I need to evolve. Before that though, I proceed to Route 3, and the unique Pokemon there is Jigglypuff, which makes 12 Pokemon. Then I bypassed the Pokemon Center, at least temporarily, and I went to Mount Moon. Of course, I was greeted by a Zubat, my 13th Pokemon. In many cultures, 13 is seen as an unlucky number, which kind of fits. It's unlucky when you get another Zubat encounter. I then went to the Pokemon Center and paid 500 Pokédollars to purchase Magikarp. That's 14. And then as I walked through Mount Moon, battling a bunch of trainers, I found a Geodude. That's 15. But my 16th Pokemon was not a Pokemon I caught, but rather one I evolved. I mean, the rival evolves his Pokemon, so I must be able to do that as well. So at level 16, Bulbasaur evolves into Ivysaur, so even though it's still going to be called one, it's now number 16, at least registered in my Pokedex. And keep in mind, the rival doesn't say he has 40 different Pokemon, just that he registered 40 in the Pokedex. Number 17 is one of the most important Pokemon in my solo runs, Paris, very good HM and Dig user. Number 18 was another evolution, my Metapod number 7. I swap trained it to evolve it into Butterfree. Number 19 was a more traditional catch, took me a while, but I finally did find the Clefairy. We're almost halfway there, we're not even out of Mount Moon yet. On Route 4, I went to go catch a Sandshrew. This would be Ekans if you were playing in red version. Next, my Kakuna, nicknamed 10, evolved into Beedrill. That's now 21, we're more than halfway done. After beating all the trainers on Nugget Bridge, I proceed to Route 24 where I catch a Bellsprout. In red version, this would be an Oddish. For my 22nd Pokemon, I then proceeded to catch an Abra, but somehow inexplicably I lost count and named it 25. Nonetheless, It is indeed my 23rd Pokemon. It's alright, we'll get 25 very soon. Because 5, my Nidoran, will evolve into Nidorino. That's 24. And because I really wanted that nickname to be accurate, I swap trained Abra to ensure that Kadabra would be my 25th entry. So it did work out in the end. I accidentally missed a Pokemon on Route 5, but that's okay, we'll get it later. I went to Diglett Cave and quite quickly I found a Dugtrio, level 31, and that's my 26th Pokemon. Far more common to find Diglett, which will be my 27th. I then battled all the trainers in the area because there's a lot of Pokemon we need to evolve. First, my Pidgey all the way back from Route 1 would evolve at level 18 to Pidgeotto. As I was trying to battle trainers, I ran into a Drowsy on Route 11, so that would be 29 Pokemon. Next, battling the trainers on the SSN, my Spearow finally evolved into Fearow at level 20. And one of the most annoying evolutions because it can't really attack, Magikarp finally at level 20 evolved into Gyarados. We're just 9 Pokemon away. I ran out of trainers, but in Diglett Cave, my Nidoran female evolved into Nidorina, and that's going to put me at 32, but not for long, because in Mount Moon there are 2 Moonstones. One is fairly easy to find in the top left corner right after the hiker on the first floor. The other I didn't even know about. It's hidden right before you've battled a super nerd. But with those 2 Moonstones, we can evolve Nidorina and Nidorino into Nidoking and Nidoqueen, bringing our total to 34 Pokemon. Next to evolve, the second Pokemon I got in this run, Rattata, evolved at level 20 to Raticate. I then went back to Route 5 and caught the Meowth I'd forgotten to get. That's 36. And here's where we need to talk about what rules do you want to have in place for this challenge. Because in Drumish's video, there are a lot of, in my opinion, absurd preconditions. The question is whether the rival can have 40 Pokemon. I think it's clear the answer is yes. However, what if we wanted to stick to a level cap of 20? The rival's highest level Pokemon is level 20, so some argue we shouldn't exceed that. Surely his strongest Pokemon is his starter, which will be at level 20. Well, there's arguments in both directions. I will say that it is odd if you have 40 Pokemon to only bring in 4 unless you might not take the battle with me, your lesser rival, very seriously. For all we know, it's possible that the rival has other evolved Pokemon at much higher level that he is saving for a later battle. We don't know if he has 1 Abra or 3. Who's to say he doesn't have a level 21 or 22 Pokemon? Many of the Pokemon I've caught evolve at those levels. At first, I did want to see whether I could get to 40 Pokemon without exceeding level 20. And the answer is no. You can only get to 38 Pokemon. Huh? 38? I thought we were at 36. Well, there's a couple of in-game trades you can make. Farfetch'd in Vermilion, and the Abra for Mr. Mime on Route 2. Now some might say, well, the rival doesn't have access to those trades because there's only 1 Pokemon and you took it, so the number should be 36. But again, that's also presupposing we can't exceed level 20. And again, all these conditions we're placing, that's not what people say. The rival is called a liar. This is said to be impossible. I think you can tell now it definitely isn't impossible, that you definitely can have more than 40 entries. If you want to limit to no trades in level 20, fine, 36, still very close. But if you do the in-game trades, 38, and if you evolve all the rest of the Pokemon we haven't, well, stay tuned. Our 22nd Pokemon, Bellsprout, evolves at level 21 to Weepinbell. We can register that. Meowth doesn't evolve until level 28, but that happened to be the 40th Pokemon I caught just because it was really good against the Diglett in Diglett Cave. I have long since exhausted all the trainers I have access to. And while we're on the topic of what I have access to, some of you might wonder if there were more Moonstones. If we had 2 more, we could evolve Clefairy and Jigglypuff and that would have brought us to 40 with in-game trades but under level 20. The problem is no, there are more Moonstones, but they're not available until you get cut. Anyway, getting back to our count, Paris evolves at level 24, that brought our total up to 41. Graveler evolves from Geodude at level 25, that is our 42nd Pokemon. At level 22, Zubat evolves into Golbat. At level 26, Drowsy evolves into Hypno. At level 22, Sandshrew evolves into Sandslash. We're already at 45 Pokemon, but sadly, we only have 2 more Pokemon left to evolve, and they evolve pretty late. This is actually the real reason I picked Bulbasaur. It evolves earlier at level 32, and so it and Pidgeotto, which evolves to Pidgeot, will be our final Pokemon, bringing the grand total of Pokemon you can theoretically get in one save file without glitching, cheating, or hacking is 47 Pokemon prior to Rival 3. To me, that means the rival was telling the truth. Again, he has 4 Pokemon here, we know he has at least 6 to make a team, if not many others in his box. There's no reason to believe they're not stronger, there's no reason to believe he can't have stuff like Golbat or Weepinbell that he just doesn't want to use. Look at my Yellow Legacy playthrough. I enjoy playing with random Pokemon all the time. In my opinion, this myth has been thoroughly busted, and we have vindicated Rival 3 as a teller of truth. However, the comment I was referring to was about Yellow version, since I was playing Yellow Legacy. What if in Yellow version it is impossible? Or maybe the completely reverse. In Yellow, you can get to 40 Pokemon without level 20 or in-game trades, making everyone happy. Want to find out? Let's do it. So, since it's Yellow version, we start with Pikachu, that's our first Pokemon. I then proceeded to Route 22 right away and caught a Mankey, a Rattata, a Nidoran female, as well as a Spearow. Then on Route 2, I went to go catch a Pidgey, as well as a Nidoran male. In the Viridian Forest, there was only 2 Pokemon for us to catch this time, way less than in Red and Blue. All we have to catch is a Caterpie and a Metapod. The Weedle line are uncatchable in Yellow version. You can, however, catch a Pidgeotto. It would have been much smarter to catch this on Route 11. It's much easier to find it, but hey, why not go through that extra hardship? And for the record, I did catch another Pidgeotto because it would be easier to evolve. So when we battle Brock, we are currently at 10 Pokemon. Our 11th would come when Nidoran female evolved into Nidorina, our 12th when Metapod evolved into Butterfree, and 13th when Nidoran male evolved into Nidorino. There are no new Pokemon available on Route 3, so we proceed right into Mount Moon. Of course, after buying the Magikarp, which is our 14th Pokemon, then we catch a Zubat for 15. You'll have to excuse the counter in the bottom left, it's inaccurate. Geodude is our 16th Pokemon. I forgot to count Magikarp. Don't worry, I'll catch up. Not before I catch something that's not available in Mount Moon in Red and Blue, Sandshrew, that's going to be our 17th Pokemon. I then get our first Moonstone, which evolves Nidorina into Nidoqueen. That's our 18th Pokemon. Next, I caught a Paris, that's number 19. And finally, although it took me a while, I find a Clefairy for number 20. And thankfully, shortly after this, I saved the game, which is how I realized that the counter was off by 1. So now it's going to be synced up. Now, in Cerulean City, in Yellow exclusively, you can get a Bulbasaur, but there is a rudimentary friendship system, and in order for you to get the Bulbasaur, Pikachu's friendship needs to be high, which is not achieved by keeping it in the box. Thankfully, it's Generation 1, there's a bug. If you give Pikachu a potion, even if it does nothing, it increases its friendship. So just mash A on the controller, give Pikachu as much potions as you possibly can, and eventually she will give you a Bulbasaur, which would have been number 21 if I hadn't already evolved my Nidorino to Nidoking, but we are in fact at 22 Pokemon. 23 will be another evolution. I got Spearow all the way to level 20. Part of the reason the evolutions are happening sooner is you can catch evolved Pokemon far more in Yellow version than you could in Red and Blue. So I don't need to evolve Rattata or Pidgey, I can just catch the evolved forms. So Pokemon like Spearow can soak up a lot more experience points than I was able to in the previous run. And at least if we want to stick to under level 20, there aren't many Pokemon left I actually need to level up. Bulbasaur has already evolved into Ivysaur for my 24th Pokemon, and right after that, I was able to acquire Charmander. There's no conditions, you just have to talk to the NPC, and that will be my 25th Pokemon. Now, Routes 24 and 25 have also seen some big changes. You can catch Venonat now here. That's going to be our 26th Pokemon, and you can catch both Bellsprout and Oddish for numbers 27 and 28. However, you can't catch an Abra there. You have to go to Routes 5 and 6 for that. And on Route 5, we're able to catch a Jigglypuff for our 29th Pokemon. Abra would prove a little bit more tricky because it kept teleporting away, so we're going to have to wait on that one. We can proceed into Diglett Cave and catch Diglett for number 30. I wasn't able to find a Dugtrio so quickly, so I went to do some other stuff, including evolve Charmander to Charmeleon. That's number 31. We're getting really close. On Route 11, we can catch a Drowsy, just like in Red and Blue. That's 32. And while it took me quite a while, finally I was able to get an Abra to sit in a Pokeball, and that was number 33. For number 34, one of the most tedious evolutions to do, slow level up group, only one attacking move after level 15, Magikarp into Gyarados. For number 35, I went back into Diglett Cave and using Drowsy was able to catch a Dugtrio. Number 36 was Abra evolving into Kadabra. And for number 37, it is a 1% encounter, but on Route 11, you can catch a Raticate. And if you want to stick to the strictest interpretation of the rules, that is as many Pokemon as you can catch in Pokemon Yellow, under level 20, in a save file, no trading whatsoever. With all the changes made, the number is still very similar, although we got there in a bit of a different way. One more Pokemon than Red and Blue. If you do allow for trades, however, then our number is going to be identical to Red and Blue, funny enough. Although the Spearow for Farfetch trade is no longer in Yellow version, the Abra for Mr. Mime is there, but it's a Clefairy this time, and that will be our 38th Pokemon. If you want to stick to level 20, that's as far as you can go. But again, I don't really see the need to stick to level 20, and considering how many of my Pokemon can evolve, I'm sure some of you are curious just how many can you get if we don't have a level cap whatsoever. The answer is more than you think. At level 21, Oddish evolved to Gloom. Of course, since I don't have access to Celadon and the Leaf Stone, it has to stay as a Gloom. Next, Bellsprout evolves to Weepinbell. Both those evolutions are at level 21, and just like Gloom, no Leaf Stone, so it has to stay there. So this run, Weepinbell was our 40th Pokemon, vindicating Rival 3. Drowsy will evolve for our next Pokemon into Hypno at level 26. My 42nd Pokemon was Sandslash, which evolved from Sandshrew at level 22. 43 was Geodude evolving into Graveler at level 25. 44 was at level 24, Paras evolved into Parasect. Golbat was our 45th Pokemon, evolving from Zubat at level 22. And at this point, I only have a few Pokemon left that still need to evolve, and they all evolve at rather high levels, so this was kinda tedious. Venonat doesn't evolve to Venomoth until level 31, and having to just knock out Diglett after Diglett does get quite tedious, especially because Venonat really doesn't have great attacking moves. Venusaur was our 47th Pokemon. It evolves at level 32, as you remember from the last run. Pidgeot will not be our last Pokemon this time. It still evolves at level 36, but we have a couple more to go. Spoiler, I guess. The final two stragglers were Mankey, which evolves to Primate at level 28, and finally, and somewhat fittingly, Charmeleon evolves into Charizard at level 36. Now to answer some questions. In terms of Moonstones, the same thing that applied in Red and Blue applies here. There were only 2 of them. If there were more, we could have gotten to 40 even without exceeding level 20. On the same note, we could have gotten there if Officer Jenny gave us the Squirtle as soon as we got to Vermilion. But unfortunately, she will not give up her Squirtle until we defeat Lieutenant Surge. I don't play Yellow that often, so I didn't actually remember this, And I did think I was going to get to 40 Pokemon, even without exceeding level 20. I was a little disappointed when she didn't give up Squirtle, and I had to look up that you do need to beat Lieutenant Surge. Squirtle and Wartortle would have been 39 and 40, but unfortunately, you can't get them at all until you beat Rival 3. Now, some of you might be asking, should the starters count? The rival doesn't get access to them. And I know I'm repeating myself, but I'm going to give the same answer I've consistently been saying. The claim is that it is impossible for us or the rival to have 40 Pokemon by the time you reach the SSN. The rival doesn't say anything about level caps or other NPCs he may have talked to. All we can do in a video game is assume that the AI and us are playing by the same rules. And as it turns out, playing by the rules of the game, no trading, no cheating, nothing, we can get to 50 Pokemon in at least yellow version. And it's at this point the video should come to a close. I've made my point whether you see it my way or not. Case closed, video over. Why is there still more video? Because he says the quote in Fire Red and Leaf Green. And while Fire Red and Leaf Green ostensibly are just remakes of Red and Blue, in reality there are some differences, but I wouldn't call them major differences, so I'm not going to go Pokemon by Pokemon. Some Pokemon are moved around a little bit that don't affect us overall, but there are two changes that do affect the total count. The first and most important change is the fact we can get 4 Moonstones in Mount Moon. There are still 2 Moonstones where we found them in Red, Blue, and Yellow. But in Fire Red and Leaf Green, you can get 2 more. It is annoying, it is terrible, here is how. So instead of getting TM1 Mega Punch, you get TM46 Thief. This actually isn't necessary, but it makes this next part a lot less annoying. It was still very annoying. So, in the second basement, you can find Clefairy 6% of the time, which is nice, until you realize 5% of the time, of the 6% of the time where you actually get a Clefairy, it can be holding a Moonstone. In other words, I had to spend literal hours encountering Pokemon after Pokemon. I mean, I used the time to train my other Pokemon to level 20, but it was really tedious. I found the first Moonstone really quickly, the second one took a really long time. But because we can get 2 extra Moonstones, that means we can get Wigglytuff and Clefable, so that would bring our total to 38, no trade under level 20. But there's actually one more change that was made. In Red and Blue, Mankey is exclusive to Red, and Meowth is exclusive to Blue. In Fire Red and Leaf Green, they are no longer version exclusives, and thus you can get both Mankey and Meowth in one game. I chose Fire Red version. This means that if you don't want to do any in-game trades, and you want to stick to under level 20, so close, but you can get to 39 Pokemon. If only the old rod let you catch Goldeen like it does in later games, we would have 40, but there you go, 39, and since I don't mind using in-game trades, to me, unequivocally, we have vindicated the rival in Generation 3, and because of the extra Moonstones and the extra Pokemon, which has an evolution, we can get 51 Pokemon, over 1/3 of the Pokedex, prior to battling Rival 3 in Fire Red Leaf Green. I realized that I recorded like hours of footage that I've just shown a few minutes of, but it's worth it so we can say I have fully explored all avenues of this myth and the various ways you can analyze it. My conclusion is that the rival is telling the truth. If yours differs, it's okay to be wrong. I'm kidding. I know now someone is going to suggest that maybe I should check in Let's Go, and I'm not going to do that. Why? Because there's a different rival in Let's Go, and he doesn't talk about how many Pokemon he's registered, and thus, we don't have to myth bust a non-existent myth. Nobody talks about Let's Go because it's a different line of dialogue. So, we're good. We have gone through every released version of Pokemon in Kanto where the rival says it. I have proven that he indeed is not a liar. Thank you guys for watching, and I hope to see you all in the next video. Take care.